Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming. What we do, we did this last year, and it was a lot of fun. And there's actually more people here this year than there are last year. And we're recording for audio and podcast, and so we have a cool video going overall. And I just want to make sure the audio is good, which it is. But this is awesome. Real quick, how many people is this your very first time at a TF Labs Niftmint event in Seattle? Raise your hand. Oh wow, that's a good amount. That's awesome. And then I'm gonna go the reverse. How many people have been to, say, like 5 TF Lab events? Go ahead and raise your hand. That's over half of the room. How many would you say, if you had to say like maybe like 10 events have you been to? Awesome. Okay, and then we started this way back in 2018. Who was at that first event in 2018? I know Lawrence was. Adam, you were there, actually. Anybody else was there? Aaron was there. Yeah. Nate, you were there. Yeah. Yeah. So wow. We've been hosting events for a number of years, but I'm supposed to be getting interviewed, I guess, right now. So I'll
no, that's
shut
okay.
up for a second.
Before we get started, I just wanted to also say that this is the TF Labs space, but also it houses Niftmint as well. I've had some questions tonight, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. What's the difference between TF Labs and Niftmint? Who owns both of those? What's the deal with that? Also, we have a really beautiful space across the hall that is open and available, so feel free to take a look around as well. There are a lot of opportunities to connect and to collaborate with Jonathan, Niftmint, and TF Labs, in addition to co-working spaces, right? We've had a lot of really fun events, and I just really encourage you to follow, connect, and meet the other folks that are here as well. We're going to be inviting folks up that we've talked to ahead of time, and Jonathan, you know, he's kind of our surprise cannon, so he may call on someone that wasn't spoken to ahead of time, so just be game. It'll be fine. And we'll bring folks up in just a few minutes to talk about what we're looking forward to the next in this upcoming year. And so let's start with Jonathan. Jonathan, tell us, what is the difference? What is up with TF Labs and Niftmint?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry, we'll do a little plug here first. Thank you for that question. Mm-hmm. So TF Labs is actually a company that we started 100% by accident. So I had a previous startup in the last crypto 2017. And for anybody that remembers Bitcoin at 20K to Bitcoin down at 3K, that was the life of the company, is when we started that. And so it was an interesting time. And honestly, I started going to all these events, and most of the events that I went to were very much like crypto to the moon, and we're all going to get rich. And it was like ICO heaven. And that's interesting, but not necessarily what I was interested in. I thought, you know, there's probably people that want to learn about the technology, want to see how this kind of works with businesses, and are thinking about this at a scale. And so that's why we started that first conference back in 2018 at the Columbia Tower Club. So we always pick really nice venues, and we've had some, you know, really amazing speakers that we brought to Seattle along the way. And through that, that's grown into doing things like consulting and media for other people. So we do a lot of things behind the scenes for other people on their events or their content, as well as collaboration and basically ushering brands and organizations into Web3. We've worked with some really interesting companies like Coinstar. We've done a number of things like that. And where Niftmint comes in, because I think that's what you're going to ask next, is Niftmint actually started also by accident, in that, you know, we were working with a handful of brands, and at the end of 2020, I actually started to notice that NFTs were getting really interesting. And it's the first technology that I noticed that brands understood right away. So I've been working in early stage retail technology since 2014, done things like buy now buttons inside of social media to beacon technology. And that was a fight to talk to brands about how the world was going to work. And now everybody buys things on, you know, Instagram and TikTok, and that's a totally normal thing. But in 2014, brands just didn't get that. Same with beacons. You know, when you walk into a store and you get a notification or you get some sort of message as a result, like that didn't make sense to brands many years ago. But with Web3, in particular NFTs, I believe that the reason why brands understood it is they really saw it as something that they could either give away, they could sell it, or they could use it and attach it to something else, right? So brands, no one knows how to sell better than a brand, right? They know how to get us the things that we want. For better or worse, in my opinion, when NFTs really started to take off and you started to have kind of like this rocket ship of NFTs, that unfortunately kind of I think for the best way to put it is it just confused brands on how to operate in this industry. And so you had a lot of brands try to essentially do avatar drops. We had really massive brands, as in like the second largest soda manufacturer reach out to us, right, wanting to do something. And we actually turned down brands that wanted to do 10,000 avatar drops. And it wasn't because we don't like that. It's just that we didn't think that that works for a brand. And I think that's kind of, what we've seen overall. So long story short, and why we started Niftmint is we've just always believed in this notion of tokenizing everything. And that might sound really crazy right now. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but I like to put it in the same reference of when you think of the transition from analog to digital, right? In the transition from analog to digital, our information was basically paper inside of some sort of organization or institution, right? And now it turned into digital, and now it's just digital information inside of that institution. I believe tokenization is the next evolution of how content is managed, how our information is managed. And what's interesting about tokenization is just the evolution of digital in the context of that information lives inside of the network of the organization that created it or is a part of. But by being tokenized, it actually can live outside of the network as well. And on top of that is you can create essentially rules as to how that piece of information now operates in the network. So that's what we're working on the Niftmint side is we believe in that world where everything becomes tokenized, and we're creating the infrastructure to support that so that you and I can use it every single day and never even realize that we're using it. Because how many people, raise your hand today if you use HTTPS, raise your hand. Everybody's hand should be up right now because you all use HTTPS today, because HTTPS is basically an internet protocol, right? When you put the domain in HTTPS, right? That S is a security layer, making it encrypted, packeting the information so it's encrypted and protected in between the channels. There's not really a way to do that with content unless you encrypt it, right? And so tokenization is an easier way to do it. So that's getting really nerdy and really technical, but we don't need to know how HTTPS works to use it, just like we don't need to know how tokenization works to use it.
Okay, so is that kind of like, I know we have a lot of newbies here, and so I want to be very newbie friendly as well. Is there like a brief 2-sentence cliff note for what you would summarize tokenization to be?
Think of it as tokenization is a digital stamp. That's the easiest way to think of it. It's just simply a digital stamp where information can live, and information can be, essentially locked and unlocked with rules behind it. I'm still getting pretty technical on that. But yeah, again, none of us care about tokenization or even should. No one in this room should be like, I want my information tokenized. No, what you want is you just want more secure info. You want more secure content. You want the most authentic version of your content possible, which is essentially why you care about tokenization. Not because you care about tokenization. You want authentic content.
And I'm going to toot Jason or Jonathan's horn for him for a second too.
Her husband's name is Jason.
Whoops. LinkedIn, JG Blanco, TF Labs, Niftmint. Jonathan posts quite frequently, and I feel a lot of what he posts is pretty relevant to what's going on in the market. And same thing on Instagram. So feel free to look that up and stay connected. A lot has happened in 2023, and now I think we're all just kind of sitting here going, what is going to happen in 2024? And I think a lot of that depends on what your industry is, what you're interested in. And so for you, Jonathan, what do you think is going to be the big hot topics, the things that are most interesting for 2024?
So a couple weeks ago, it was the Bitcoin ETF, right? And that's awesome. I think that shows a level of maturity in the cryptocurrency space that we have not had yet. When you have Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, the largest asset manager in the world, basically say, hey, we want to drive this forward. And he actually said tokenization is the next thing, right? So tokenization of financial assets. That's incredibly interesting. What's funny is like a couple of days later, Jamie Dimon said, Bitcoin is essentially, for nefarious activities, and he's not a supporter of Bitcoin, which, is fine, to each his own. But he also did say that he's very much interested in blockchain technology and tokenization overall. So, I'm a proponent of Bitcoin, and I think, obviously we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. What I'm most interested about 2024 is I think that the FTX situation is 100% like out of people's window. Like I don't think people are using that as an excuse anymore as to why they wouldn't want to get involved with crypto, where that was a very, very big thing last year. Like you couldn't have any conversation about Web3 or blockchain without that coming up, and I don't think that comes up anymore. But what's been interesting to us, and honestly, the reason why we've kept driving with Niftmint, so our first year in Niftmint, we did incredibly well. We had, and this is just me being full transparency with everything, we did incredibly well. We did, almost 200K in revenue our first year. And then our second year, we dropped down to like about 55K in revenue. So like, that's a huge, drastic drop, right? And like, that doesn't look good. And it's like, hey, like, why are you doing this? Well, for us, it was natural in the sense that people were more excited about NFTs in 2022. In 2023, FTX happens. So we would be talking to brands who would say like, look, I can't get the people above me to approve this right now. Like we're still very much interested in it. We're still doing things here. We're still thinking about this. We just can't get this approved. So that for me was actually, I could have looked at that two ways. I could have looked at that as like, oh, well, like this industry is done. I'm going to pivot to AI like a lot of people did in Web3, which no harm on that. But for us, is I still very much believe in what we're doing. But the fact that I noticed that every single major brand that we were talking to still had individuals within the organizations working on it in some way, shape, or form, at whatever capacity. Either they're just reading about it and learning about it, or they're spending time, really trying to think about programs. I was like, okay, there's really something interesting in here. And there's a handful of brands that we've been talking to for years that we have work done for them that essentially once they feel comfortable enough, they're going to turn on the button to make it go. And that's again, what gets us really excited over this. I think the last thing I would say is about what gets me excited about 2024 is the fact that every kind of run has like this sickle that just like chops people's heads off, in the space. I remember the ICO sickle, and then we had, like this NFT sickle and like kind of the FTX sickle. But kind of like, what sickles are actually used for is like cutting weeds and cutting, brush and stuff. That stuff grows like stronger and stronger and stronger. And so like this weed is incredibly strong, and like the people that have been in the space for the time that they've been, I think are even stronger than they are before, and have either made mistakes themselves or seen the mistakes. That I think, really like the best fruit is going to start to partake, which no offense to anybody that's getting into the space right now, but I believe you have an incredible disadvantage towards starting something fresh. Like if you're like, oh, I'm going to start a blockchain company, or I'm going to start a Web3 company right now, doesn't mean you can't do it. And I don't want to discourage you from doing it, but just be intimately aware that you need to get people involved who have been through the trench, right? Who have been through some of the hard parts. Because if you haven't experienced a crypto winter and built at the same time, you just don't know. It's like, it's the difference between like me driving a race car or like standing in the stands watching it, right? Like I can tell you how to do things from the stands, or I can tell you how to sing a song. I can tell Taylor Swift how to sing a song, but I can't sing a Taylor Swift song, right? You wouldn't do that. So you really need to make sure that you have people in your corner that have, trowed through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, cool. Well, let's start opening it up to other people. Thanks for asking me questions, Sarah.
And then also, probably at the end, we have a microphone just right over there because of where the camera is. We encourage any of you, all of you, to please feel free to come ask questions.
Yeah, and by the way, also if you even throughout, like if some, because we're gonna be, like I said, we're gonna be inviting people up. So if you have a question even if you have a question for me of what I just talked about, or as people are coming up, just walk over to this mic and just stand in front of it, and then I'll know to get your question asked overall. But again, thank you all for being here. We do these monthly, so make sure that you're on our email list. If you're not, you probably got an email about this. We can't do this without the support of the folks that put this together. So I want to give a huge shout out to Aaron, who's I think in the back. Aaron does a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, everything from making sure that we're getting emails, that we're getting the posts about it, the pictures and the food and all that kind of stuff. She writes our grants. She's really a connective tissue for all this. And Bean as well. I don't think they're even hearing me, but that's okay because I'll let them know. And then also the Niftmint team, which is Ridwan and Taban and Gibson. Really thankful for them, and of course to Sarah, who has been intimately involved with TF Labs as of recently. So if you want to help us in putting these things on, we're always open and welcome to that. This is completely volunteer that we do this, and we make the tickets free, and then we have a suggestion if you want to. So everybody that did pay to come here, we really appreciate you because you basically helped put this on overall. So,
and I should also drop my socials too. So I'm Sarah McCarter. I know a lot of people are wondering who the heck I am. My socials, I'm pretty much across everything as NFT EA VIP because I really liked NFTs and I wanted to talk about it. So spill the tea. But we'll talk about that sidebar. And thank you, Jonathan. Let's get folks up here.
Awesome. Okay, so we have a couple people that we had mentioned ahead of time. So let's get John Bender up here from Cronin. Give John a round of applause. So John, why don't you do us a favor real quick and introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, sure. So my name's John Bender. I'm a partner at the Seattle firm Corr Cronin. We do litigation and regulatory defense work. We're late bloomers, admittedly, to this space, but huge supporters, and that's sincere. Anyone in this room can call me anytime, and you won't receive a bill, I promise.
I'm calling you tonight.
Yeah, you can call me anytime, John. So, I'm on the steering committee of the Cascadia Blockchain Council, and most importantly, tonight, I'm Ari Yu, the chairperson's proxy. So I have big shoes to fill.
Nice. Well, with that, you said that you're a late bloomer. So, what does that mean? And when you got started, and then what was the driver to, get Cronin, involved in the space?
Yeah. So I guess I basically founded the blockchain practice group at our firm, and we had done a lot of work in the tech area, and also a lot of friends, family, kind of really focused and invested in this space, and it appealed to me, and so once we saw that we were helping clients through really complicated issues, kind of the evolving nature of it, it just made sense from a business standpoint.
Nice. And so the topic here is what's in store for 2024. So what are you thinking through and in this coming year? And how has, call it, the previous years impacted that thought process?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Our workflow, kind of in terms of the cases that we've been working on, kind of have trail the different ebbs and flows you were just talking about, right? So picking up the pieces of failed ventures or folks who lost a lot of money in FTX or things like that, and we do both company side and investor side work. From kind of a intellectual academic standpoint, watching the theater play out with the SEC and the different things that are happening in this space is interesting, and that's going to continue to play out for at least a couple years. I think we're still pre-first inning. The Coinbase and SEC theater is also interesting, right? Coinbase has sued the SEC saying you need to do rulemaking, right? Otherwise, we're all out here kind of stumbling around in the dark. The SEC sued Coinbase. We'll get some decisions that should provide clarity as well. And then, Washington State, folks like yourself, everyone in here are doing really cool things to try and lead the way.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. Some of the things, like we had a recent meeting and things like that. What are some things that you can share?
For sure. And you'll have to forgive me. Ari sent me a laundry list of things to plug, and she's very strict. So I got to make sure I hit these. But so the first thing that I think is really cool and exciting is so the legislature, Washington, passed a bill that required the Department of Commerce to assemble a work group to put together recommendations for policy to lawmakers. And so the Department of Commerce essentially just did that, putting together kind of a smaller group that you sit on, I sit on, others. And I don't know, Jonathan, I was pretty encouraged by kind of the tone that was set by the department at our meeting last week. What did you think?
Yeah, most definitely. Especially, seeing it from, years ago. Actually, that the very, very first token for so TF Labs actually stands for Token Forum. So we don't call it Token Forum anymore. But the very, very first Token Forum, we had Congressman Derek Kilmer there, and he was very supportive, of course, but not as intimately knowledgeable, as people have evolved now. So, to think about that and to think about where we're at now, I'm definitely very encouraged that there's people interested in the state government in making sure that Washington has a foothold here.
Yeah, and so I'm like a policy wonk. I know we all are, but I think it's really exciting because we get to put together like a concrete package of recommendations for folks at the state level, right? And that's where a lot of the cool work is happening across the country right now. The WTIA and ARI and others are working to establish an AI work group as well, and hopefully turning that into a permanent standing group. I know the legislature is super focused on AI, as is everyone. They're also working to build out use cases. So that includes regional economic visas with Canada, as well as verifiable credentials for the FIFA World Cup that's coming up in a couple years. And last but not least, there's going to be a pretty cool thing down in Olympia on February 21st. It's going to be Demo Day, where basically lawmakers are going to be able to interact with products and technologies our community is building, in the quantum, AI, and blockchain space. So that's something I'm looking forward to for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. So you heard it here first. There's some lots of innovation happening at the state level, and lots of knowledge wanting to be had there. So for kind of the last question is what are that's kind of what you're encouraged by. Do you have any either predictions or things that you think might happen in the next couple months from a policy standpoint? What are some things that you're thinking about when you think of Web3 or crypto or blockchain in 2024?
Well, it's a great question, right? So you mentioned the Bitcoin ETFs, right? And I think you're going to see Ether ETFs for sure by the end of the summer. I think that's a huge kind of bellwether event, like you mentioned, to go mainstream with this technology. And I think, honestly, the litigation that the SEC is involved in right now is really interesting. There was a decision over the summer in the Ripple case, very favorable. The SEC really hasn't course corrected yet. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, awesome. Well, John, thanks for joining us, and appreciate everything you shared with us.
Absolutely.
Give John a round of applause.
Appreciate it.
So next, I'd like to invite Renatta Fairbanks up. Renatta is an amazing finance person. She actually, in full disclosure, works with Niftmint on our finances, and so I would highly recommend her. But I always appreciate her insight and on it, her operational mind and how she organizes things. So thank you for joining us. And with that, why don't you give everybody a quick little introduction to yourself, and we'll get right to it.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. So my name is Renatta Fairbanks, and I am a fractional controller. I am a manager at Armanino, but whatever I say today does not represent the company. I think I joined TF Labs, like your community, back in 2022. I don't know, time moves really fast for me. So I started off as a blockchain accountant, and so that's why I'm here. I love cryptocurrency. I love to represent the people. So
Nice.
yeah, it's good to be here.
Awesome. So, as someone who is thinking about blockchain from a finance and accounting standpoint, what are just some basic housekeeping or things that, people building in this space should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think last year when we had this conversation during the SVB crisis, I mentioned that compliance is going to be huge. And I think that's something that I actually predicted that went into fruition in 2023. I think more and more clients are focused on compliance, and it's music to my ears. It's not only because I want to work for the IRS. I just want to protect you. I don't want you to go to jail. I don't want you to deal with the bureaucratic burdens that they're going to impose on you, because that is just time taken away from productivity ultimately. So continue with your compliance initiatives.
And what are some things that founders should be doing to do that? Is it documentation? Is it working with someone like yourself? What are some things that they can be doing to make sure that they are remaining compliant?
Yeah, I'd say, if you're not able to afford an accountant at the moment, just make sure that you set up a shoebox. I actually owe you one to just throw all of your receipts in. I'd say I own every single one of my receipts from 2013. I can account for every single one of them. So if you can do that for yourself, I'm not saying, like keep every single receipt like you're an accountant, but I think you should definitely try. There's also other systems that you can set up for yourself. I'd say just like, whatever paper trail you have can be used against you, and it can also be used for you. So the more paper trails you have on hand, the better. And of course, if you can find somebody to work with like me, that would be the optimal thing for you to do. But understandably, if you ever have any questions on how to improve your compliance, you can reach out for me for any questions, and I'll put you on the right path.
Awesome. And last question for you is, what is in store in 2024 from your perspective and your point of view?
Yeah, last year I said that we were going to go sideways as far as price action goes, and then I also mentioned compliance. So I was wrong about going sideways. At the end of the year, we saw some price action going up, so that's thrown out the window, but compliance, continue on that path. For this year, I'm going to try to start this theme where I'm going to say a term. I think this year we need to focus on authentication. So what I mean by that is that I think we're going to start seeing some convergence between AI and tokenization. So like basically blockchain and AI. And we are going to need to be able to help the public decipher what is a deep fake versus what is real. Not only that, that's like one bucket. We also need to protect our own IP. So like, how do we prove that we were a contributor towards a huge project? So I think that's where tokenization will really kick in and ultimately authenticate products overall.
Love it. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Renatta. Let's invite Nathan Love up to the stage. Come on up, Nathan. Thanks for joining us. I've known Nathan for many, many years, since probably like 2017, actually. So Nathan's at T-Mobile. Before T-Mobile, though, he was at CoinMe, which for those of you that might not be familiar with CoinMe, first probably major Bitcoin ATM, and now they run their Bitcoin ATMs through Coinstar. So you can go to pretty much any grocery store in the entire country, and you can purchase Bitcoin with Coinstar. And T-Mobile has been pretty active in supporting the Web3 community, and I know there's been some initiatives here and there. But why don't you just introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so Nathan Love on the Wholesale team at T-Mobile. Obviously, Jonathan was one of our applicants for the T Challenge we had. Our parent company, Deutsche Telekom in Germany, hosts once a year this challenge to bring in a lot of startups and some cool new areas. So last year we had about 500 applicants, 20 finalists, and Jonathan with Niftmint was one of the 20 finalists. So flew you and your team back to Germany, and
Which was a lot of fun.
yeah, and also a great learning opportunity, and for both sides. I mean, for all of us. So yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of things on the back burner with Web3. We're trying to do at T-Mobile. Unfortunately, coming from a startup back to a major, company with almost 80,000 employees, a huge market cap. It's difficult to get things done in the fast ways we used to in the startup world. But that being said, we do have a very large presence, and Web3 is definitely still hot on the mind. And so I think, we're trying to keep active conversations. And since we're based in Seattle too, we're trying to work in our backyard, look at, partners, companies that are all based here. Dan Thageson, my boss, is really bullish on helping grow locally. And so that's what we're really excited about.
Yeah, it's awesome. In 2023, you all put on a Web3 event that was awesome. I'm curious from your perspective as someone who, has a lot of connections in the Web3 crypto space. Like, a lot of the early people in the space. You've been at you're really instrumental and early at CoinMe, and now T-Mobile. Like, how do you think about Web3 being adopted by companies? Like what's kind of like, if you were able to get right to an executive, not necessarily at T-Mobile, but any company, like what's your presentation or pitch to someone there to say like, hey, you should really start thinking about this?
Yeah, there's kind of two angles there. One is with Web3, especially on the blockchain side, like sustainability was a huge buzzword last year. People really wanted to focus on that versus, there's tons of opportunity. Like look at T-Mobile, right? We have all these phone number mapping. I mean, there's tons of problems to fix, like SIM swapping and things there that we can use that for. But as far as companies, they just need to embrace that there's attention, there's a desire for people to be involved in this area, and it's an education. It's trying to help them learn more, and there's a perfect spot right now for everyone to come together and learn more of that. So.
So Nathan, from your perspective, what is in store for 2024?
Fresh credit. No, there's a lot of cool startups here that I think that we're trying to further grow to be something that makes noise. I think, obviously the compliance piece is huge. So as that comes around, people will stop focusing on the whole FTX and a lot of the drama and the bad and start looking at the good. And then some of these use cases need to start going to work and showing that, there's a real value here and there's a use case, and keep it simple. That's really, I think 2024 is going to really make things much more fluid. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nathan.
Thanks, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
So next up, let's invite Shelby up. Give Shelby a round of applause. So Shelby's art is being displayed in the conference room where the food is. And Shelby is an artist. How do you prefer to be? Do you prefer to be called an artist or an NFT artist? Like, how do you prefer to be kind of identified there?
I prefer artist. I think that all NFT artists are truly artists at heart.
Yeah, awesome. Well, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, so I'm Shelby. I'm an oil painter first and foremost, but I'm also very involved in the Web3 space. I've, been both the creator of collections and ordinals and ETH drops, super rare auctions. I was the first independent artist to land a partnership with Magic Eden. So I'm very proud of that. And yeah, even though I'm an oil painter, I still am very happy to be centered in Web3 and so grateful for this community. And also, thank you to you for having me here today, and to Sarah.
Yeah, most definitely. So you're an oil painter originally, and then do you scan your art, or did you did you add digital art to your oil painting?
So, great question. I do scan my art to sell as prints, but for all of my NFTs, I actually created it digitally, and a lot of them are animated. So, I had a lot of new skills since I've been in Web3.
Awesome. As someone that has been doing, I know you're an artist, but doing NFTs and art, How have you seen that evolve over the last couple of years, right? It was very exciting and interesting, call it like 2-3 years ago. And, there's might have been like a little bit of a lull, but like how have you, call it, persevered and continued through that? And, or have you even noticed any sort of lull, in that regard?
I mean, I think it would be pretty hard not to notice. But I've only been in NFTs for maybe 1.5 to 2 years. So I wasn't here for the initial bump. I kind of came right after that. And I have seen the fall, though. So I kind of came in right when it started to dip down. And then, recently we've seen a surgence with Bitcoin ordinals and Solana. So I'm really happy to see that and a lot of energized people around that community. But I do think it's been very difficult as an artist to weather, the ups and downs. And primarily I am an oil painter. And I think it's really important, and I've emphasized this, even in the Web3 space, for artists in NFTs to also consider themselves artists out of NFTs. You're an artist at heart, and whatever medium, however you sell your art, it's still art. And I think it's important for artists to explore, avenues of revenue outside of NFTs and Web3 because of the volatility of crypto. And I also encourage artists in Web3 to explore different chains, different blockchains, and not to be so tied to one blockchain. There's no reason to put yourself to at the whim of the volatility of a single blockchain when cryptocurrency as a whole is still so volatile. It's good to have different eggs in different baskets.
And so last question for you, from your perspective, what's in store for 2024 from like a crypto art or, that sort of segment?
Yeah, so I actually have been reflecting on this question a lot and what's going to happen in the coming year, and I do have some notes on it. So this year, I think that the most important development for art, both in the traditional art world and in Web3, is AI. As a very traditional oil painter, I'm probably one of the last people that you might expect to hear that from, since so many artists and people in general despise AI. And I think that this is primarily from a place of fear. We've seen different controversies from Netflix to most recently Magic the Gathering, where people find out that a company has been using AI and they protest it and they boycott it. It's a really big deal. As renowned AI artist Claire Silver has said, just in the past 6 months or so, AI art has become virtually indistinguishable from, real or human-made art. I've experienced it myself just in the past 3 months. It changes so rapidly. It's wild. And this is a very scary thing for most artists. And, it threatens our very identity. But I think it's really important to look throughout history to try to understand this and also make sure that we position ourselves for success rather than being left behind. For example, the innovation of the camera in photography. In the past, artists did not consider that to be art, but many successful photographers of today would prove otherwise. Pretty sure everybody in this room could come up with some example of an industry throughout history that was threatened by a new technology, that threatened to make it obsolete practically overnight. And the players in the industry must either adapt and evolve with the times or become replaced and disappear. And I believe that AI is the most powerful creative tool to ever exist, besides the human brain. And there are 1,000 ways we could talk about AI changing industry, but today I'm only going to talk about AI in the way that we use it as a tool to make art. And in my opinion, that is what AI is. It is a tool. It's not the answer, but a tool to help you find the answer so much more efficiently. I have never created something like generated art with a prompt and felt like it was really my art. However, I have used it to create references for my oil paintings. I find it as a sketch pad, it's extremely useful to create hundreds of drafts or iterations of an idea before I turn to my more like hands-on creative process. And reference images for painting have been super important since the beginning of human creativity. I used to spend literally hundreds of hours searching the internet for different photos to bring them into Photoshop and stitch them together, and then use that as a reference for my oil painting. Just like in the 1700s, oil painters used a tool called a camera lucida. They would actually look through, and it would help them project an image of what was in front of them onto the canvas. Now, artists have a new tool to save us the time. What I have found is that the more unique your vision is, the less likely AI is to be able to execute it. AI operates based on the input of all existing human art and images. Therefore, it can only create in the image of what was created before it. There are extremely talented AI artists who push the boundaries of this, and many of them I count as friends, and they create entire worlds and stories with their art, or art that is truly unique to their own style. But no matter how anyone is wielding this tool, the result is that beautiful images are becoming more and more attainable. Anyone can create beautiful, high-quality images using AI. And the quality of the image alone is not going to be the most valuable attribute. In fact, it is no longer rare at all. It is the message, the story, the world, or the connection within the art that is valuable. It is the ability to make the viewer feel something, to feel connected to the image and the artist behind it, to transport them to another place in time or in their mind. And while this is to some extent the way that art has always been, about marketing and much more than just the image itself, I think that it's going to become even more clear in this year and beyond. And so that is what I predict will play out. And what I aim to do with my own art when I'm creating. So yeah, if anybody has any questions about art or AI, please feel free to ask me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, next, let's bring up Adam Philippi. Adam Philippi is a lawyer and founder of Aeon Law, and a self-proclaimed cypherpunk. All right.
So I joined the Cypherpunks mailing list in 1993. So I was already jaded on crypto when the Bitcoin white paper came out. I'd seen cryptocurrencies crash and fail a dozen times before, and when it came out, I was like, this is really poorly implemented. It's never going to go anywhere. So I'm the curmudgeon, or one of the multiple curmudgeons in the room. Hi, Lawrence. But I play in the technology and intellectual property space. I run an intellectual property law firm. And so I see a lot of projects, most of which I can't tell you about the current ones, but I can talk about broad trends and not break attorney-client privilege.
Okay, what are some of those broad trends that don't break attorney-client privilege?
Ren, thanks for stealing my thunder. Authentication. So the fundamentals of tokenization and authentication of things continues to be strong and interesting. And we're starting to see some interesting things around how AI is breaking down conventional ideas of ownership and creation. And maybe tokens can be a way of recapturing some of that, where this concept of possession is 9/10 of the law. So if you can, it gives you the possibility to possess a digital thing, even if copyright law may not be on your side.
Super interesting. Yeah, that's I like that a lot, actually, because it fits to what we're doing. Tell us more.
Well, it's so courts around the world have come to a consensus with one small blip or an asterisk in South Africa, but everyone else has said you have to be human to be a creator that is going to be awarded the copyright in a creation. And the way if you're a human artist that's collaborating with AI, the US Copyright Office says, you need to tell us exactly what the AI created, and we will carve out the copyright protection for what was AI created. And there will be no copyright protection for any of that. It will be public domain. Anyone can access it because it goes back to the fundamentals of our history. Our copyright law is based on our US Constitution, which says in order to protect artists and scientists, we have patents and copyrights. And we want to, and they define those as humans, because oh, I wish I could remember the exact Abraham Lincoln quote, but it was about patents. He said, patents are the fuel that drives the self-interest of inventors. And an AI is not self-interested yet, hopefully. We haven't gotten to HAL yet. But you can't motivate an AI to create better art by giving them a copyright.
Yeah, so I just looked at it. So it goes, added the fuel of interest to the fire of genius in the discovery and production of new and useful things.
Yeah. So the AI isn't going to get better by protecting it with these laws. So the courts are saying no protection. But tokenization might come to the rescue as a way of encapsulating and being able to own something, even if people can make an infinite number of copies for free and put it on t-shirts, and you can't do a thing about it, but you can still own that original one.
Right, exactly. That's interesting that you say that, because that's really our perspective is, like, you know, how do you basically make sure that you can track the point of origin, right? And so, like, you know, whoever claims that first is doing that.
I mean, the other things, there's going to be some interesting new, some continued developments. I do think sustainability, particularly as we're talking about the younger generations, is going to be very important. Yeah. I've spoken with my kids, and they're okay with Solana. They are very not okay with Ethereum. Yeah. Yeah. And then also some interesting things around zero knowledge proofs. I think we have yet to scratch the surface on what the technologies that zero knowledge proofs are going to enable.
Lawrence, did you want to add something? But if so, hold on a sec. Can you actually come over here, because I want to pick you up on the mic is all.
It's actually a question.
Perfect. So, real quick before, he's already here. So, Lawrence, what is the question?
So, your own image. If you use an AI hypothetically to create a book cover,
Yeah.
and you use your own image, is that copyright protected?
Well, what do you mean by your own image?
Like that was the inspiration to the AI? Like you fed the AI your image?
Yeah.
So in general, the courts are still going that if you created an image as a prompt to the engine, that large image model, a large language model, has munged it up with so many other things in the process that a court is generally going to say, no copyright protection, is the way I've been seeing the cases come down recently.
Good to know. So hypothetically,
if you just publish a book.
Yes. and it happens to look like me.
It happens to look like you. Well, you couldn't have been using DALL-E, because they would have said you can't you can't try and emulate an actual person using their system.
And I don't want to take up all the air, but Midjourney is much more friendly.
Yeah. So it's now you get my lawyer's answer, which is everyone knows the lawyer's answer. It depends.
No.
I thought it would just be interesting because people are probably using stuff they already have, images.
So, and I mean, we can quickly get into a gray area.
Yeah, and
but once you start commingling with the creative works of all humanity, your ownership quickly disappears.
Well, I feel that I've given humanity something to look forward to. Thank you.
Nice. Well, Adam, last question for you is, what is in store for 2024 from your point of view, from your perspective?
A lot more brass tacks, infrastructure, improving systems, getting and yeah, I mean, it's the one technology that I've been, other than things like sustainability, more robust systems, better security, zero knowledge proofs, I think, are going to be an interesting area to navigate because they allow some anonymity, which can be perceived as dangerous. Anytime you're allowed to do things in the blockchain community and stay anonymous, it gets the interest of governments. But I think there's going to be a return to people wanting to have some privacy and some control over how their information flows. And zero knowledge proofs are going to allow people to interact without necessarily having to share full identity information back and forth.
Yeah. Super interesting. Well, thank you, Adam. Appreciate you joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, so we just have a few more people that we're gonna bring up here. So with that, Alvaro, I'd like to bring you up. So Alvaro Jimenez. So I've also had the pleasure of knowing Alvaro for a number of years, I think also since 2017 as well. So you got some folks here in the room who've been in this for a while. So Alvaro, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody, and we'll take it from there.
Alvaro Jimenez, originally from Barcelona, Spain, been here for 13 years, and since 2017, trying to support the space as a serial entrepreneur, mostly on the capital side.
Yeah, and let's talk us through that. You know, there's different forms of capital. There's, you know, venture capital, there's private equity, there's hedge funds. Like, what area do you play in?
Tried a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
With different degrees of success.
Nice. And you know, how as someone that's been on the capital side, and you know, how was last couple years? How was that? You know, and then what are you essentially looking forward to? You know, since we've come out of that.
Well, I think right now the market is quite flat. Most people are still sitting on the sidelines. Big capital is still sitting on the sidelines. The ETF approval, as we know, was going to be perhaps a turning point. But just like with everything else, you know, there needs to be demand for that ETF. There needs to be money flowing in, right? As of now, we have interest rates on the debt side that are typically double digits because it's prime plus risk, etc., right? And if you look at, for example, DeFi yields as of today on big projects, they're most of them still on the single digit. If you want double digit, you need to go pretty fringe. So that is not an indicator of a thriving market. On the contrary, you know, the yields do not support, as of now, a huge influx of capital because you can deploy your capital somewhere else, get a higher return with lesser risk, right? So until that switches, and it could very well be the Bitcoin halving coming on April. I'm surprised nobody has mentioned that because that's perhaps the biggest event of the year for 2024. But that could be a turning point if we start seeing those indicators switch, right? And yields on DeFi go higher. There start to be more demand for the ETF. All of those would be bullish indicators that attract capital. More capital comes in, more chances we have of, you know, the market moving from flat to upwards.
Yeah. And so, you know, you mentioned the Bitcoin halving as being a big factor. Like, you know, what else are you excited about for 2024, or what should we be aware of or thinking about?
Well, I mean, I think builders keep building, and there's a lot of very cool things being built. And, you know, some of those, whether on the NFT space, which there's still plenty of innovation, or on the blockchain space, on the B2B side, or on the B2C side, or just in crypto in general, there's still some very cool things being built, and that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Alvaro, thank you so much for joining us. Give Alvaro a round of applause.
All right. Cheers. Thank you.
So I didn't ask him, but I'm going to put him on the spot. Matt, do you want to come up here? Can I put you on the spot? All right, so Matt Sorg is a developer with Solana. So wanted to bring him up, and more than just developer, obviously, but just wanted to, on the dev side there. And he has his charcuterie board in front of him.
Yep, thank you.
So, Matt, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hello. Yeah, I guess my title is the head of technology at Solana Foundation, which is kind of the facilitative entity of the Solana blockchain, the blockchain that kids love, apparently.
Nice. So, give us a quick rundown on Solana for those that might not be familiar with it, and kind of like how it might differ from some other chains.
So Solana, you can kind of think of it if Ethereum was made by cryptographers, Solana was made by network engineers and people really trying to optimize every single part of the stack. There's this kind of a theory, a blog post called that represented the trilemma, where you have security, decentralization, and scalability, and you had to kind of like sacrifice one for the other. And we kind of fundamentally don't really believe that. It's not. There's these engineering principles that are laws, like the CAP theorem, but the trilemma is more of a conceptual one. And so like it's our goal to kind of break that. And so we've kind of rewritten the entire stack to be performant every single step of the way. Solana does more transactions per day than all other public blockchains combined. And like very cheaply, and part of the reason why he was joking that kids love it is it's very energy efficient. It's like basically a transactions less than a Google search for propagating out to the whole network. So it's very efficient. A lot of refis on it for that reason, and we're just kind of like trying to optimize every single part of the stack to be a very good base layer for businesses who want to do maybe international payments. Maybe I'll take a step back. Like the reason why it exists, like the initial, like user requirement is if you wanted to make a marketplace or an economy that was worldwide. So you don't want it to any specific location because everything would move closer and closer to New York with NASDAQ, for example. It's part of the reason why there's not as much finance on the West Coast because they would just have a disadvantage. About as far as you can go is Chicago. So if you want to have it worldwide, you kind of have to have a server not in any one location. It's also good to have not one entity really control that system, and that's where Solana comes. We're kind of This is my theme song as I give you my rundown. So that's basically it. It's trying to make this worldwide state machine that everybody has roughly equal access. So you can operate on it. You can be operator of the network, and you can also transact on it with similar information anywhere in the world.
Nice. Don't worry about it, sir. I guess my last question, and we're gonna wrap it up here soon, so we can have the rock concert anyway. But what's in store? Actually, before we get to that question, Darian has a question for you.
Yeah, I think both Matt, you, and Jonathan, what do you think about how meme coins are drawing all this capital when you have a blockchain like Solana that might be adding more utility? You have a project like Niftmint that would love to have some of that capital to do real utility. Obviously, it's good attention, but do you view it as somewhat zero sum, or is it just adding to the value of the crypto ecosystem?
So we're allowed to have our own opinions at Solana Foundation. I think they're fun. Like for me, as somebody working in the technology, it's actually pretty good for us to just take these toy problems, and they do spam the network. They do a bunch of things that help us understand it. But it is, at the end of the day, I don't know, basically gambling or whatever. It's of that ilk. I don't really think of it as something that's like, I don't know. At the best, maybe that's the best. Like some people have some fun with it. At worst, it's pretty predatory because you basically have influencers just running some sort of circle around a bunch of retail. And I definitely not like advocating for it at any real point at all. I think, and that's probably the reason why I'm here is I respect businesses that are trying to have sustainable business models and usher in new commerce for new businesses. That's the sustainable path long term. So yeah.
I guess a quick follow up on then. There's a few blockchains that are kind of technology first, maybe Algorand, Internet Computer, and some people at one point viewed Solana as that. There's more apps building on Solana now, but do you think that's the key to these other blockchains taking off that have, you know, the best tech per them? Is it app builders? Is there some other way to bring attention?
Yeah, you kind of have to have. Some people express it as like religion, which I think is really not what you want. What you want to be able to do is appeal to people with a product sense. Like they see similar to like the Amazon type of thinking, where you see a user problem and you say, "Oh, I want to solve that problem. This is the best platform from that." If you don't really have that, you don't have like that motivating reason that can really compel somebody, then yeah, it's really hard. And if you do have the better tech, but you just aren't selling that, you just have to work on whatever you're doing to sell that story. That's the problem you have to figure out. Sometimes it's lowering the barrier to entry. Sometimes it's really doubling down on a specific use case and making sure that people see exactly how to implement that there. Whatever it is. We took a bunch of different approaches. Like 99% of them failed, and a few of them are doing all right. So yeah, that's kind of how we got here.
Looks like we have another question.
Yeah, hey, I'm just curious. The Ethereum blockchain, there's different providers like CoinMarketCap that'll do mapping of tokens and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any provider on Solana that does mapping of different tokens that get bridged over?
By mapping, you mean to understand like the data structures?
Of where liquidity pools reside throughout the network, or is there any aggregator of that information currently?
There's tons that will. I mean, Vibe Network will even visualize it for you. It's really neat. It's like flashy little, orbs when all the transactions are flowing from this app to this app. Yeah. So there's. I mean, even I believe one of those does something very similar on Solana. Solana is like, because it does so many transactions, it's a little bit harder for some of those. If you're not dedicated to doing a Solana specific data visualization, it can kind of overload your system if your reference is a 13 transaction per second Ethereum. But yeah, there's tons of that, like Hello Moon. I can name several that all do like various forms of data analysis on the tokens.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then last, so what's the store for 2024?
I think there's a ton of pretty legitimate shots on goal now. We mentioned T-Mobile a couple times here, and like Dan. Helium is a decentralized wireless network that released nationally. It's $20 a month. You can actually get paid. You can opt into them to collecting data, and then you can actually get paid to walk around. So most people actually end up having basically free internet, which is really I use it, and I just have free internet. It's a free internet. I mean, on my phone, free. Like I can make calls. It's T-Mobile service, basically that quality, but it's made much cheaper because of the fact I'm using a bunch of people hosting their Wi-Fi as mobile hotspots. So it's there's stuff like that, and I can go through all the applications that are doing legitimate plays, but I think I don't think all of them are going to pan out. But and I think mass adoption is a little bit of a meme, but like getting the product market fit. Just like have a few apps where you have very, very dedicated, very sustained businesses. That's where I think we really need to get to as soon as possible, because there's enough capital that's poured in. There's enough I think the technology is there for at least a dedicated application or two to really take off. And I think that's really where we need to get to. And like loyalty, I mean, there's tons of things that I think are very legitimate or explorations at that.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thanks for coming, and thanks for coming up on the spot. So give Matt a round of applause. All right, everybody. Well, we've been going for a little over an hour, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up this part. So I do want to thank everybody for being here today for our first event of 2024. Hopefully, everybody got some good information. Did you enjoy it? Yeah, awesome. So we're still finalizing when our February event is going to be. It's likely going to be in the 20s of February, so like mid 20s of February. But be on the lookout for that event and each monthly event. My request of you is, if you see an event, register sooner than later if you could. That just helps us track who's going to be there, but more importantly, make sure that we have enough food, we have enough drinks and beverages, and can just plan properly. And then also, if you come here regularly or not, I encourage you to bring just one person with you the next time you come, right? It can be anybody. So yeah, it looks like some people brought people along. But definitely do that. We want to make sure to just continuously grow the community, the crypto and Web3 community here in Seattle. And I think that the more people doing good things and the more stories that we can make sure are being told and shared, I think it's really the better for all of us. And if I can be helpful, or if TF Labs or NIF can be helpful to what you're doing, please feel to reach out anytime. I'm pretty accessible. And I think that's really all I have. Oh, also, if you took any pictures tonight, do us a favor and post them on social and just tag us, and then that way we'll comment and reshare it as well.
What's the hashtag?
Just tag us at TF Labs or at Niftmint. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and reshare that or post that out as well. So, anyways, we will see you next month, and you're welcome to hang out and connect. And actually, if you know me or if you've been to our events before, I love taking a group picture. And so we're going to take a group picture right now. And I think what we're going to do based off of like setup and lighting is actually have everybody stand on that side and set up there. And then I will turn this camera that way, and we'll just try to get everybody in a photo real quick. All right. So it's actually a video. It's another way to trick people using videos. But it makes it a lot easier. So on the count of 3, everybody say cheese. 1, 2, 3, cheese. And now everybody say 1, 2, 3, Bitcoin. 1, 2, 3, Bitcoin. And when I say block, you say chain. Block. Chain. All right. Thanks everybody for being here. One big smile.